I watched my husband's lawyer slide the custody agreement across the polished mahogany table, and I knew exactly what came next. In my first life, I would have sobbed. I would have begged. I would have promised to be better, smaller, more convenient. I would have fought with every breath in my body to keep my children. This time, I just smiled and signed my name. Mrs. Chen, Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose above her reading glasses. You understand what you're agreeing to? Your husband is requesting full physical and legal custody of both children. You'd have supervised visitation only every other weekend. I understand completely, Your Honor. I kept my voice steady, pleasant even. Across the table, my soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus, shifted in his seat. He'd expected a war. And you're certain this is in the children's best interests? The judge was giving me an out. She'd seen enough custody battles to know when something felt wrong. Absolutely certain. I met her eyes. Marcus has always been the more involved parent. He should have full custody. That was a lie. Marcus hadn't changed a diaper in 8 years of marriage, didn't know our daughter Lily's teacher's name, and thought our son Noah was allergic to strawberries when it was actually kiwi. But I'd learned something in my first life, in those final moments before the pills I'd swallowed dragged me down into darkness. The truth doesn't matter if no one believes you. Marcus had won custody in my first life after a brutal 2-year court battle. His family's money, his lawyers, his ability to present himself as the stable, successful provider while painting me as an unfit mother, it had all worked. He'd taken my children and used them as weapons, dangling visitation like a treat for a dog, canceling at the last minute, filling their heads with poison about their mother who didn't want them anymore. I'd died at 34, alone in a motel room, bankrupted by legal fees and destroyed by grief. Then I woke up in my bed on my 30th birthday, Marcus snoring beside me 4 years before the divorce that would ruin my life. This time, I was ready. Very well, Judge Morrison signed the order with obvious reluctance. Full custody to Mr. Chen, effective immediately. Child support will be calculated based on the standard guidelines. Actually, Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer interrupted, barely suppressing his smirk. Given that Mr. Chen will have full custody and Mrs. Chen will maintain her high-earning position as senior partner at Morrison and Associates, no relation to yourself, of course, we'd like to request that the court order Mrs. Chen to pay child support to Mr. Chen. There it was, the real reason Marcus wanted custody. Not for love of our children, but because in his mind he'd found the perfect revenge. I dared to ask for a divorce after discovering his affair with his secretary, Amanda. I'd dared to embarrass him by filing first, before he could control the narrative. In his mind, I deserved to be punished. And what better punishment than making the wife who'd rejected him pay for the privilege of losing her own children? The judge looked at me. Mrs. Chen, do you have any objection? None whatsoever, Your Honor. I watched Marcus's face light up with triumph. I believe child support should be calculated based on both parents' incomes to ensure the children maintain the lifestyle they're accustomed to. Agreed, the judge made a note. I'll order a full financial disclosure from both parties. Given Mrs. Chen's income as senior partner, I believe the firm disclosed your compensation as approximately $340,000 annually, and Mr. Chen's position as marketing director with a salary of $95,000, the support obligation will likely be significant. Marcus's smile grew wider. His lawyer actually winked at him. They had no idea what was coming. However, the judge continued, I'm also ordering a comprehensive assessment of the children's needs. Mr. Chen, you'll need to provide documentation of all expenses related to their care, including medical, educational, extracurricular activities, and any special needs services. Of course, Your Honor. Marcus straightened his tie. I'm fully committed to providing the best for my children. Another lie. Marcus's commitment to our children extended exactly as far as they could serve as props for his image or weapons against me. Then we're adjourned. The judge gathered her papers. Mr. Chen, the children will transition to your full-time care beginning this Friday. Mrs. Chen, you'll have your first supervised visitation 2 weeks from Saturday. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Behind me, I could hear Marcus and his lawyer congratulating themselves, probably already planning how they'd spend my money. Let them celebrate. They'd earned it. In the courthouse bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 4 years, or 4 years in one lifetime, depending on how you counted. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "How did it go, sweetheart?" "Perfect," I typed back. He took the bait, the thing about Rebirth, and I still wasn't entirely sure if I'd lost my mind or if this was real, was that it gave you something more valuable than magic or money or power. It gave you knowledge. I knew every move Marcus would make because he'd already made them. I knew his lawyer's strategies, his family's tactics, his mistress's influence over his decisions. More importantly, I knew what I hadn't known the first time around, exactly how expensive my children were about to become. In my first life, Marcus had won custody and then systematically starved me of access to our kids while draining me financially. The child support I'd paid him had been modest. He'd hidden his new income sources, claimed the children had minimal needs, and his lawyers had run circles around mine. But this time, I'd spent 4 years preparing. 4 years of documentation, of strategic career moves, of setting up the perfect trap. Marcus wanted custody? He could have it. He wanted child support? Oh, he'd get it. And when everything he'd taken from me came due, he'd wish he'd never been born. The first time around, I hadn't seen it coming. That's what I told myself in the dark days after, when I was trying to understand how my life had imploded so completely. But looking back with the clarity of hindsight, or rebirth, or whatever this was, I could see the signs everywhere. Marcus and I had met at a mutual friend's wedding 10 years ago. He'd been charming, attentive, ambitious in a way that felt exciting rather than threatening. He worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm, talked about moving up, about building something meaningful. I was a year out of law school, grinding away as a junior associate, buried in document review and billable hours. He made me feel seen. That was his gift, I realized later. The ability to make you feel like you were the only person in the room, like your dreams and fears and hopes mattered more than anything. It wasn't until after the wedding that I understood he did this with everyone, that it was a skill he'd honed, a tool he used to get what he wanted. We married after a year of dating. Quick by some standards, but I was 26 and thought I'd found my person. My parents had concerns. My father, ever the pragmatist, noted that Marcus's family had money, but Marcus himself seemed content to coast on his family's reputation rather than build his own success. My mother, more diplomatically, suggested we wait. I didn't listen. I was in love, or what I thought was love. Really, I was in love with the person Marcus pretended to be. Lily was born a year after the wedding. Perfect, beautiful Lily with her dark curls and her father's eyes. I took 6 weeks of maternity leave and went back to work because we needed my salary. Marcus's income had plateaued and his family's money came with strings. His mother, Diane, controlled the purse strings and made sure everyone knew it. Noah came 3 years later, and that's when things started to crack. I was up for junior partner at the firm, working 70-hour weeks, nursing a newborn, managing a preschooler, and somehow also expected to maintain a perfect home because Marcus's mother liked to drop by unannounced to inspect. Marcus, meanwhile, had started staying late at the office. Networking, he called it. Building relationships with clients. I was too exhausted to question it, too focused on surviving each day. The first time I saw Amanda, she was at our house for a work event Marcus was hosting. She was young, 24 to our 32, blonde, bubbly, and clearly infatuated with my husband. I was nursing Noah in the bedroom when she knocked on the door, lost looking for the bathroom. "You're so lucky," she'd said, watching me, with wide eyes. "Marcus talks about you all the time. How brilliant you are, how dedicated. I don't know how you do it all." I should have heard the envy in her voice, should have recognized the way she said my husband's name, familiar and warm. But I was too tired, too deep in the fog of new motherhood and career demands. That first life, I didn't discover the affair until Noah was 2 and Lily was 5. I found texts on Marcus's phone. He'd gotten sloppy, or maybe he wanted me to find them. The messages were explicit, damning, and dated back 18 months. He'd been cheating on me since I was pregnant with Noah. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it, didn't apologize. Instead, he turned it back on me. What did you expect, Claire? You're never here. You're always working, always putting the firm first. The kids barely know you. I'm the one who does bedtime, makes breakfast, goes to school events. Amanda appreciates me. She sees me. It was masterful, really. In 3 sentences, he'd made his infidelity my fault and set the groundwork for his custody claim. I filed for divorce the next day. I thought I was being strong, taking control. I didn't realize I was walking into a trap. Marcus's family had money, but more than that, they had connections. His mother, Diane, had been on the board of the Children's Museum, the Arts Council, half the charity organizations in the city. His father, Richard, had been a city councilman before retiring. When Marcus told them I was filing for divorce, they mobilized like an army. Within a week, I was under investigation at my firm for billing irregularities, false claims, but the investigation alone was damaging. My name appeared in whisper networks, rumors spreading that I was unstable, neglectful, more interested in my career than my children. Marcus filed for full custody, claiming I was an unfit mother. His evidence? Photos of our messy house, taken when both kids had the flu. Testimony from his mother about my erratic behavior. I had called her intrusive once. Records showing I'd missed 3 of Lily's school events because I'd been in trial. Amanda testified too, painting herself as a family friend who'd witnessed my neglect firsthand. The judge, a different one than Morrison, an older man who made comments about career women and priorities, ate it up. The custody battle lasted 2 years. My legal fees exceeded $200,000. I was drowning in debt, working insane hours to pay for lawyers, and losing ground every day. Marcus, funded by his family's money, could outlast me indefinitely. When I finally ran out of money for lawyers and had to represent myself, it was over. Marcus got full custody. I got supervised visitation every other weekend, to be paid for by me at $50 an hour for the supervisor. He was awarded child support too, but it was modest, around $12,200 a month, because his lawyers had successfully argued that the children's needs were minimal and that I'd already proven myself unreliable with money given my debt load. What happened next was systematic destruction. Marcus canceled visitations constantly. The kids are sick. We have plans. Lily doesn't want to see you. I'd drive 2 hours to the visitation center, having arranged my schedule and paid for the supervisor, only to be turned away. When I did see them, it was clear he was poisoning them against me. Lily wouldn't hug me, would talk about how much happier they were now, how Amanda was basically their new mom. Noah, only 4 years old, parroted phrases that were clearly fed to him. You don't love us. You chose work over us. I tried to go back to court, but I had no money for lawyers. I filed motions myself, poorly worded and legally insufficient. The judge denied them all. Marcus's lawyers filed counter motions claiming I was harassing their client, that my instability was exactly why I shouldn't have custody. I lost my partnership track at the firm. The investigation had been dropped. They'd found nothing because there was nothing to find, but the damage was done. I was asked to transition to of counsel status, a face-saving way of pushing me out. My income dropped by 60%. I moved to a studio apartment, sold my car, stopped eating regularly to save money for the child support payments and the visitation supervisor fees. Every dollar I had went to maintaining that fragile connection with my children, even as they grew more distant with each visit. Marcus remarried Amanda in a lavish ceremony I saw photos of on social media. Lily was the flower girl. Noah was the ring bearer. They looked happy, like a real family. I wasn't invited. On my 34th birthday, I took the last of my sleeping pills. I wrote letters to Lily and Noah that I knew they'd never read, explaining that I loved them, that I'd tried, that I was sorry. I wrote one to Marcus too, though I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted him to know he'd won. I lay down on my motel room bed. I'd lost the studio 2 months before and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was in my bedroom, sunlight streaming through the curtains, and Marcus was beside me snoring softly. My phone alarm was going off, a birthday reminder. Happy 30th. Birthday! I sat up so fast I almost threw up. The room spun. I grabbed for my phone, checked the date. 4 years before the divorce. 4 years before everything fell apart. 4 years to make sure it never happened again. The first thing I did was cry. Huge, gasping sobs that woke Marcus. Claire, what's wrong? He sat up, concerned in that performative way of his. I could see it now, the calculation behind the concern. Was I upset enough to need real comfort, or could he get away with a few soothing words and go back to sleep? Just a nightmare, I managed. Sorry, go back to sleep. You sure? He was already lying back down, eyes closing. Yeah, just hormones or something. He was asleep again in seconds. I fed it. There in the dark, my mind racing. Was this real? Had I actually traveled back in time, or had I just dreamed 4 years of hell? The details were too vivid to be a dream. The taste of those pills, the feeling of drowning as sleep pulled me under. The specific words Marcus had used in court, the exact way Lily had looked at me the last time I saw her, like I was a stranger she was being forced to spend time with. It was real, or real enough that it didn't matter whether it was time travel or prophecy or insanity. I knew what was coming, and that meant I could change it. The second thing I did was plan. I spent the next week in a daze, moving through my routine while my mind worked overtime. I was a junior partner at the firm. I'd made partner 2 years earlier than in my first life because this time I'd been more strategic about bringing in clients. Lily was 4, Noah was 1. Marcus was still faithful as far as I knew, though Amanda had started working at his company 6 months ago. I checked. Made an excuse to visit his office and met her. She was just as young, just as eager as I remembered. She didn't know me yet, hadn't learned to hide her interest in my husband. Claire, Marcus had been surprised by my visit. What are you doing here? Brought you lunch. I held up the bag with the same smile I'd used in the courtroom. Thought we could eat together. We sat in his office and I watched him. Really watched him in a way I hadn't in years. He was handsome. I'd always known that, but now I could see the vanity beneath it. The way he checked his reflection in the window, the way he arranged himself to show his best angles. How's work? I asked. Good. Really good, actually. We landed that Robertson account I was telling you about. He hadn't told me about any Robertson account. He'd stopped telling me about work years ago, or maybe he never had, and I'd just been too distracted to notice. That's wonderful, I smiled. You work so hard. Someone has to. He took a bite of his sandwich. I mean, with you working all the time, I'm basically raising the kids alone. There it was, the seed of the narrative he'd use against me later. But now I could hear it for what it was, a preemptive strike, a way of making me feel guilty for earning twice what he did. You're right, I said, and watched his eyebrows rise in surprise. I do work a lot. Maybe I should cut back, spend more time with the kids. No, he backtracked quickly. We need your income. I just mean it's hard sometimes. What he meant was, I need you to keep earning so I can maintain the lifestyle I want. But I also need to establish that you're a bad mother so I have leverage when I need it. I appreciate everything you do, I told him. You're such a good father. The third thing I did was document everything. I started keeping a journal, detailed and meticulous. Every time I made breakfast for the kids, most mornings, every school drop-off alternating, with Marcus. Every doctor's appointment I attended, all of them, every diaper change, bedtime story, middle of the night comfort session. I took photos and videos constantly, the kids playing, me playing with them, Marcus on his phone while they called for him. I joined the PTA, volunteered at Lily's preschool, knew every teacher's name. I was visible, present, undeniably involved in my children's lives. And I started building my case. I knew the affair with Amanda would start soon if it hadn't already. I hired a private investigator, someone discreet, who came recommended by a divorce attorney I met with hypothetically. I'm not saying I'm getting divorced, I told the attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance. But if I were hypothetically, what would I need to protect myself? Patricia had been through this before. She walked me through asset protection, custody considerations, how to document involvement with children, what judges looked for in custody disputes. Hypothetically, she said with a knowing look, the best custody cases are the ones that never go to court. If you can negotiate a reasonable agreement, you avoid the trauma of litigation. And if the other party isn't reasonable? then you make sure you have an ironclad record of being the primary caregiver. Photos, videos, witnesses, medical records, school records. Anything that shows you're essential to your children's daily lives. I spent 6 months building that record. 6 months of being the perfect mother, the perfect professional, the perfect wife. Marcus grew comfortable, complacent. He thought he was getting away with something. The private investigator confirmed the affair in month 7. Photos of Marcus and Amanda having lunch, holding hands, kissing in his car. Hotel receipts paid with his credit card. The one I didn't have access to, the one his mother had given him for emergencies. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I started phase 2, the financial preparation. I got a second opinion on my will, updated my beneficiaries, and established a trust fund for the children that Marcus couldn't touch. I moved a portion of my income into accounts he didn't know about, legal but separate. I paid down our joint debts aggressively, refusing to take on new ones even when Marcus suggested we remodel the kitchen. We should save, I told him. You never know what might happen. He shrugged and spent his mother's money instead. And then I discovered something I hadn't known in my first life. Something that changed everything. I was going through medical bills. I'd started managing all our finances, claiming I wanted to understand our expenses better, when I noticed something odd. Noah's pediatrician visits were more frequent than I remembered, and there were referrals to specialists I didn't recognize. I called the pediatrician's office. Hi, this is Claire Chen, Noah's mom. I'm organizing his medical records and wanted to confirm his diagnosis. There was a pause. Mrs. Chen, you were at the appointment when Dr. Harrison explained the developmental delay? My blood ran cold. Right, yes, I just wanted to confirm the details for insurance purposes. Developmental delay. I booked an emergency appointment with Dr. Harrison and went alone. I need you to explain everything again, I told her. My husband handles most of the medical appointments, and I want to make sure I understand. Dr. Harrison pulled up Noah's file. Noah is showing signs of autism spectrum disorder. It's mild. He'll likely function very well with proper therapy, but he needs speech therapy, occupational therapy, and we should start behavioral therapy as well. The early intervention is crucial. And my husband knows this? Of course, he was here when we discussed it. She hesitated. He seemed less concerned than I would have expected. He said you both wanted to wait and see before starting therapy. I had never been told. Marcus had hidden this from me, possibly because he thought the diagnosis made Noah less perfect, more complicated. Or maybe because he was already planning for custody and didn't want the complication of a special needs child to interfere with his image. Start the therapy, Mom, I said, all of it, whatever Noah needs. The cost? Don't worry about the cost. Start the therapy. Over the next year, Noah began therapy 3 times a week. Speech, occupational, behavioral. My insurance covered some of it, but the out-of-pocket expenses were substantial, around $3,000 a month. Marcus complained about the cost, but didn't stop me. He was too busy with Amanda to pay attention. I documented everything. Every therapy session, every progress report, every recommendation from every specialist, and I learned something important. Children with special needs were entitled to specific care, and the cost of that care could be mandated by the court in a divorce. That's when I knew exactly how to destroy him. In my first life, Marcus had hidden Noah's diagnosis and avoided therapy, keeping the costs low and making Noah's needs appear minimal. This time, Noah was in full therapeutic intervention with a documented history of significant expenses that were absolutely necessary for his well-being. Marcus was building his case for why he should have custody. I could see it in how he'd started documenting things too, taking photos when the house was messy, making pointed comments about my work schedule to his mother when he knew she'd tell others, let him. I had something better, the truth, properly documented. When Noah was 2.5 and Lily was 6, I found an apartment. Not to move into, not yet, but to have ready. I signed the lease in my name only, paid 6 months in advance from my separate account, and furnished it simply but comfortably. 2 bedrooms for the kids, 1 for me. I told Marcus I wanted a divorce on a Tuesday evening after the kids were in bed. I know about Amanda, I said simply. I've known for a while. He didn't even try to deny it this time. Claire, look, I'm not interested in excuses. I've already filed. You'll be served tomorrow. His face went through several expressions: shock, anger, calculation. You're not taking my kids. I'm not interested in keeping you from them. I'm interested in what's best for them. What's best? He stood pacing. What's best is that they have a stable home with a parent who's actually present. You're never here, Claire. You work constantly. The kids barely know you. That's not true, and you know it. I kept my voice level. But if you want to argue that in court, we can. Your mother doesn't get a vote. This is between us. But of course, Diane got involved immediately. She called the next morning, her voice icy. You're making a mistake, Claire. Marcus is an excellent father. If you pursue this divorce, you'll regret it. That sounds like a threat, Diane. It's a promise. Our family has resources, connections. If you try to take my grandchildren away, I'm not trying to take them away. I'm trying to make sure they're cared for properly. She laughed, sharp and humorless. We'll see what a judge thinks about that. I hung up and called Patricia Vance. I need you to represent me. No more hypotheticals. The divorce proceedings began, and true to form, Marcus and his family came out swinging. They filed for full custody within a week, painting me as a career-obsessed absent mother. Diane provided testimony about my cold demeanor, my obsession with work, how I'd refused to decorate the nursery the way she'd suggested. I'd wanted something simple. She'd wanted Baroque. Amanda testified that she'd observed the children being left alone while I worked late, a lie, that Marcus had confided his concerns about my mental health, another lie, that the children seemed happier when they were with their father, the only one that stung because she believed it. Marcus had already started poisoning them against me. But this time, I was ready. Patricia presented my documentation, photos and videos spanning 2 years of me caring for the children, school records showing I'd attended every parent-teacher conference, medical records with my name on every appointment except the ones Marcus had deliberately hidden from me. And then she presented Noah's medical records. Your Honor, Patricia said, the Chen family's youngest child, Noah, has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He requires extensive therapeutic intervention, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and behavioral therapy, each 3 times per week. Mrs. Chen has ensured he receives this care consistently for the past 18 months, at a cost of approximately $3,000 per month out of pocket after insurance. Marcus's lawyer objected. This is irrelevant to the custody determination. It's absolutely relevant, Patricia Day countered. Mr. Chen has requested full custody of both children, including a special needs child with significant ongoing medical expenses. Mrs. Chen wants to ensure the court understands the full scope of care these children require, particularly Noah, and whether Mr. Chen is prepared to maintain that level of care. Judge Morrison, yes, we got lucky with the judge assignment, or maybe I'd requested her specifically, looked at Marcus. Mr. Chen, were you aware of your son's diagnosis and treatment plan? Yes, Your Honor. Marcus looked uncomfortable. And you're prepared to continue this level of care if granted full custody? Of course, whatever my son needs. Good. Judge Morrison made a note. Because the court will absolutely mandate that Noah's therapeutic care continues, and if you're awarded custody, you'll be responsible for ensuring it happens. I could see Marcus doing the math in his head, probably calculating whether his mother would pay for it. What he didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone, was that Noah's needs were about to expand significantly. 3 weeks before the final custody hearing, Noah's developmental pediatrician recommended additional interventions: aquatic therapy, expensive; therapeutic horseback riding, very expensive; and an intensive summer therapy program, extraordinarily expensive. All of it was medically necessary, all of it was documented, and all of it cost a fortune. I approved it all. By the time we got to the final hearing, Noah's monthly therapeutic costs had ballooned to nearly $7,000. My insurance covered about $1,500 of it. The rest was out of pocket. And Lily, in a development that honestly broke my heart even though I knew it would help my case, was struggling with anxiety related to the divorce. She'd started therapy too, regular sessions with a child psychologist, plus medication that required monitoring. Patricia laid it all out for the judge. 2 children, one with special needs requiring extensive ongoing care, one with mental health needs requiring consistent support. Total monthly cost of their care, including the basics plus medical needs, approximately $10,000. Mrs. Chen has been managing these expenses with her salary, Patricia explained. She earns $340,000 annually as senior partner at Morrison & Associates. Mr. Chen earns $95,000 as a marketing director. If the court awards custody to Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen is prepared to pay child support to ensure the children's needs continue to be met. However, she's concerned about whether Mr. Chen fully understands the financial obligation he's requesting. Marcus's lawyer stood. Mr. Chen has the full support of his family. Does he? Patricia pulled out bank statements I'd subpoenaed from Marcus's accounts. Because these statements show that Mr. Chen's mother, Diane Chen, has reduced her financial support significantly over the past year. It appears she was upset about his affair and subsequent divorce. Mr. Chen's income alone is insufficient to meet these children's needs. I watched Marcus's face pale. He hadn't known I'd subpoenaed his records. Hadn't known I'd documented his mother's threats to cut him off if he embarrassed the family with a messy divorce. Judge Morrison studied the documents. Mr. Chen, can you maintain your children's current standard of care on your income alone? My mother will help. The court can't rely on promises from third parties. Can you personally afford to maintain this level of care? Silence. Let me be clear, Judge Morrison continued. If I award you full custody, you will be responsible for ensuring these children receive all their necessary medical care. Mrs. Chen will be ordered to pay child support based on her higher income, but the court will also ensure that support is calculated to reflect the children's actual needs, which are substantial. How substantial? Marcus asked. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia, who smiled. Based on Colorado's child support guidelines and the children's documented medical expenses, Mrs. Chen would be ordered to pay approximately $4,500 per month in basic child support. However, the children's medical expenses, which would be split proportionally based on income, would add another $5,000 per month to Mr. Chen's obligation. He'd be responsible for approximately 72% of uncovered medical costs based on the income differential. I did the math in my head. Marcus would be getting $4,500 from me in child support, but he'd be paying out roughly $5,000 in medical expenses. Net loss, $500 a month, plus the full cost of housing, feeding, clothing, and caring for 2 children full-time. Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer tried to recover. Perhaps we should reconsider the custody arrangement. I thought Mr. Chen wanted full custody. Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. Is he now saying he's not prepared to care for his own children? No, of course not. Then we'll proceed as requested. Full custody to Mr. Chen, supervised visitation for Mrs. Chen as she's agreed to, and child support calculated based on the guidelines including proportional medical expenses. I signed the papers with a steady hand. Marcus signed them with a trembling one. As we left the courtroom, Marcus grabbed my arm. What did you do? I gave you exactly what you asked for. I pulled away. Sanesis. Enjoy your victory. The first month, Marcus called me 6 times. Claire, about Noah's therapy, do we really need all of these appointments? Yes, the developmental pediatrician was very clear. You were at the appointment. I hadn't been at that appointment either. I'd arranged it deliberately when I knew Marcus couldn't attend, and made sure the doctor documented his absence. But the recommendation was solid, and Marcus had agreed to continue Noah's care. He couldn't back out now without looking like he was neglecting our son. And the horseback riding? That seems excessive. It's therapeutic. It's medically necessary. Talk to the doctor if you have concerns. He didn't talk to the doctor. Talking to the doctor would mean admitting he didn't understand his own son's needs. By month 3, Amanda left him. I heard it through the gossip chain at his office. Apparently, she'd thought being a stepmother meant shopping trips and family photos, not managing therapy schedules and dealing with a special needs child's meltdowns. When Marcus came home stressed and broke, spending every weekend shuttling between appointments instead of taking her to brunch, she decided she'd rather find a boyfriend without quite so much baggage. Diane, true to her word, had cut Marcus off financially. She blamed him for the divorce, for embarrassing the family, for choosing that girl over his marriage. She blamed him even more when she learned about the child support arrangement. He was supposed to make me pay, not end up paying himself. The calls from Marcus became increasingly desperate. Claire, I can't afford this. The therapy, the medications, the specialized summer camp, it's too much. It's what no one needs. Can't we reduce the schedule? Maybe cut back on some of the appointments? Talk to his doctor. He did talk to the doctor, who documented that Marcus Chen was requesting to reduce his son's medically necessary care for financial reasons. That note would be helpful if he ever tried to modify custody. By month 6, Marcus had burned through his savings. He'd taken a second mortgage on the house, the one we'd owned together, which he'd gotten in the divorce settlement to cover costs. He was pulling money from his retirement account, triggering tax penalties he hadn't anticipated. And then, Lily's anxiety got worse. She'd started having panic attacks at school, triggered by the stress of the custody situation and the back and forth between households. Her therapist recommended increasing her sessions from once a week to 3 times a week, plus potential medication adjustments that would require monitoring. The new therapy schedule meant another $2,100 a month in costs. Marcus's share, $850. I can't do this, he said when I dropped Lily off for his custody time. Claire, I'm drowning here. You wanted full custody, I reminded him. You wanted to be the primary parent. I didn't know it would be like this. You would have known if you'd paid attention to your own children. His face hardened. This is revenge, isn't it? You planned this. I planned to make sure our children get the care they need. If you can't provide that, we can go back to court and modify the arrangement. Back to court? He laughed bitterly. I can't afford the lawyer I have now. By month 9, Marcus was behind on the mortgage. He'd tried to move into a cheaper place, but the custody agreement specified that the children needed their own rooms, and a 3-bedroom apartment in a decent school district cost more than he could afford on top of everything else. He'd started skipping meals to save money. He looked haggard, exhausted, aged 5 years and 9 months. I, meanwhile, was thriving. Without the crushing legal fees from a protracted custody battle, without the emotional devastation of being separated from my children, I'd been promoted to managing partner. My income had increased to $425,000. I lived in a modest apartment, invested aggressively, and paid my child support on time every month. The supervised visitation was humiliating, but it was temporary. I was already documenting everything for when I filed for modification, showing that I was stable, successful, and consistently present for my limited time with the kids. I'd been sending gifts, cards, attending every school event I was allowed to attend. Building a record of a mother who desperately wanted to be involved but was being denied access. Marcus, meanwhile, was building a record of a father who was overwhelmed, financially strained, and increasingly unable to meet his children's needs. 1 year after the divorce, Marcus filed for modification of custody. He couldn't afford the lawyer he needed, so he represented himself. The motion was poorly written, full of legal errors, and easily countered. Patricia tore it apart in her response. Mr. Chen requested full custody and assured the court he could provide for his children's needs. Now, after just 1 year, he's claiming he can't fulfill that responsibility. Mrs. Chen, meanwhile, has paid her support obligation on time every month, has attended every school event and medical appointment she's been permitted to attend, and has maintained a stable, appropriate home for visitation. The hearing was brief. Judge Morrison was not sympathetic. Mr. Chen, you fought for full custody of these children. You assured this court you understood their needs and could meet them. Now you're asking to reverse that arrangement because it's more difficult than you expected? Your Honor, I'm going bankrupt. Children are expensive, Mr. Chen, especially children with special needs. This is precisely why the court calculates child support and proportional expenses, to ensure children's needs are met regardless of which parent has custody. If you're struggling financially, You can seek an increase in child support from Mrs. Chen based on her increased income. Patricia stood. Mrs. Chen's income has increased to $425,000, Your Honor. She's willing to pay additional child support if necessary. However, she's also requesting that the court reconsider the custody arrangement. Given Mr. Chen's documented financial stress and the children's best interests, perhaps a shared custody arrangement would be more appropriate. I watched Marcus's face. He knew what shared custody would mean: splitting the time, splitting the expenses more evenly, and losing the child support payments that were his only lifeline. Mrs. Chen is willing to take primary custody, Patricia continued. She'll request only that Mr. Chen pay child support based on his income, approximately $1,100 per month, and that medical expenses continue to be split proportionally. This would significantly reduce Mr. Chen's financial burden while ensuring the children have stable, consistent care. Marcus's shoulders sagged. He had no choice. He was drowning, and I was offering him a life raft that came at the cost of admitting he'd failed. I agree to the modification, he said quietly. Just like that, I had my children back. The second time around, I moved into the house. Marcus moved into a one-bedroom apartment and got the kids every other weekend. Real visitation, not the supervised, humiliating kind I'd endured in my first life. He paid his $1,100 in child support and covered 28% of medical expenses, which still strained his budget but didn't destroy him. I covered the rest, but with my increased income and only having to support one household, it was manageable. More than manageable. I was saving money, investing, building security for me and the kids. Lily's anxiety improved with the stability of a consistent home. Noah thrived with his therapy continuing uninterrupted. They saw their father regularly without the poison he'd fed them in my first life, because now he had no reason to turn them against me. I wasn't his enemy, just his ex-wife, co-parenting their children. Diane occasionally tried to interfere, but without Marcus dependent on her money, she had no leverage. I was polite but firm. She could see her grandchildren during Marcus's custody time, but she had no say in how I raised them. Amanda, I heard, had married someone else. Someone with money and no children. She posted photos on social media of vacations and brunches, the life she'd wanted. Marcus sometimes looked at those photos, I knew, wondering what might have been if he'd made different choices. 3 years after the divorce, I ran into Marcus at one of Lily's school events. We'd been cordially co-parenting, doing pickups and drop-offs without drama, splitting holidays according to the custody agreement. "Can we talk?" he asked. We stepped outside while Lily's teacher set up for her presentation. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, "about everything that happened, about how it all went down." "Okay. You knew, didn't you? You knew what would happen if I got full custody." "I could have lied, could have pretended innocence. But we were 3 years out and the worst was over, and maybe he deserved the truth." "Yes." He absorbed that, nodding slowly. "How? Does it matter?" "I guess not." He looked tired, but not broken. He'd survived, found his footing. He'd never be rich, would always struggle more than he'd planned to, but he had a relationship with his kids, a decent job, a life. "I'm sorry, Claire, for the affair, for trying to take the kids, for all of it." "I know. Do you forgive me?" I thought about my first life, about dying alone in that motel room, about the years of agony and separation and loss. I thought about this life, where I'd turned his weapons against him and won. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm not angry anymore, and that's something." Inside, Lily was waving at us to come back in. Marcus and I walked in together, took seats on opposite sides of the room, and watched our daughter give her presentation on butterflies. It wasn't the happy ending I'd dreamed of when I was young. We weren't a family anymore. But we were functioning, healthy, moving forward, and I was alive. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my home office and looked at the financial spreadsheets I still maintained out of habit. My retirement accounts were healthy. The kids' college funds were growing. I owned the house outright now, having bought out Marcus's share with my managing partner bonus. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. How was Lily's presentation? Perfect, I typed back. She's so proud of herself. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart. I smiled at that. My parents had been worried during the divorce, but they'd supported me through it. They helped with the kids when I needed it, never judged, never said, I told you so about Marcus. In my first life, I died before they could see me come back from rock bottom. In this life, they'd seen me handle an impossible situation with grace and strategy. Another text came through, this time from Patricia. Saw the article about your promotion to managing partner. Congratulations. You've earned it. I had earned it. By being smart, strategic, and willing to play the long game. By understanding that sometimes the best revenge wasn't destroying your enemy, it was letting them destroy themselves. Marcus had wanted custody to punish me, to make me pay, to win. He'd gotten exactly what he asked for, and it had broken him financially while teaching him what I'd always known. Children aren't weapons or trophies. They're people with needs, expensive needs, complicated needs. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. I got up from my desk and checked on the kids one more time. Lily was asleep with a book about butterflies still in her hand. Noah was curled up with his weighted blanket, his breathing even and calm. They were okay. We were okay. And that was the best revenge of all. Not Marcus's suffering, but our healing. Not his loss, but our gain. In my first life, he'd taken everything from me. In this life, I'd given him everything he asked for and let him choke on it. The only difference was knowledge. The only difference was being willing to let go of the fight I couldn't win in order to win a war he didn't see coming. The only difference was being smart enough to know that sometimes giving your enemy exactly what they want is the most devastating thing you can do. I went to bed that night with my kids safe in their rooms, my career flourishing, my finances secure, and my future bright. Marcus went to bed in his Gaza, one-bedroom apartment, checking his bank account anxiously, wondering if he could afford Noah's next round of therapy evaluations. He'd wanted to make me pay. Instead, I'd made him pay, every single month, in ways he'd never anticipated. With money he couldn't afford to spend, he'd wanted full custody, and for one beautiful, devastating year, he'd gotten it. The thing about revenge is that it's most satisfying when your enemy never sees it coming, when they think they've won right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. Marcus had his moment of victory in that courtroom when the judge awarded him custody. I'd had mine every month after, watching him drown in the financial reality of what he'd asked for, but the real victory wasn't his suffering. It was the sound of Lily laughing in her room as she practiced her butterfly presentation. It was Noah's progress reports from therapy, showing steady improvement. It was the stability, the peace, the knowledge that I'd protected my children from their father's weaponization of them by giving him exactly what he wanted. In the end, I didn't destroy Marcus. I just let him discover that winning isn't always what you think it will be. And that lesson, I think, was worth every dollar he paid.